So here we have it. A Venezuelan activist who stands for democracy dedicates the very prize to a leader who strains the whole notion of democracy. It feels off right, and it certainly did make me shiver. But if you give it a bit more thought and look through it with the lens of critical race theory, the move starts to make a little bit more sense because of three ideas. Idea one is what we call interest convergence. So change advances when the interests of the powerful and the marginalized line up. In this case, you can be rest assured that Venezuelan tariffs are not going to be affected and, in fact, be favorable. Idea two is narrative power. So whoever controls a story controls legitimacy and protection. If you think about all the redundancy language dressed up as AI changes and never mentioning the poor over-evaluation of VCs or unconstructive leadership. Idea three is about structures over intent. So systems shape choices more than individual virtue. Things like referral hiring saves time and finds culture fit, but it becomes a closed loop because the same networks hire the same profiles. Qualified outsiders never get a fair run. And then we see minorities in fragile democracies and in workplaces learn a very important survival rule. Align with power when it secures safety for you or your people. Because when we reward conformance over integrity, we get homogenous cultures where ideas merge into this one stream of consciousness. It's surprising on the surface, but familiar if you've worked in the inside of corporates like I have. People align upwards to power all the time. They call it strategy, safety, loyalty. But that's how cultures lose their compass. Maria Corina Machado said she was recognizing support for Venezuelan freedom, but that said, it also shows what happens when survival depends on power and integrity becomes tradable. And if you don't think you've seen this at work, let me remind you how many times you've seen an executive get rewarded time and time again because they bring in the results or they bring in the moolah, but they create so much internal carnage, but are always forgiven. Or when team members lower down the ranks, stay silent or protect their place in the room just so that they can take the easy road of conformity. Each choice teaches the system what it really rewards. From an inclusion and design lens, there's a seductive mistake here. Believing proximity to power equals safety, because proximity bias is growing in this hybrid work transaction environment. Be visible, be first, be across every threat to your rise. It looks practical, but it does train compliance instead of productive discourse. And you end up with a culture that talks about values but doesn't live them. So design the opposite. Create conditions where people can challenge without fear, where feedback isn't a career suicide and where difference isn't punished. That's how you catalyze creative markets and welcome new entrants and build a brand customers can't get enough of. So what does this mean for the rest of us who want to fight the good fight without sucking up to the bullies? Next time you find yourself aligning upwards to power to stay safe, ask, am I protecting the system or am I helping it to evolve? Because courageous leadership is not about who you thank, it's about what you protect when nobody's watching. Courage is about emotional alignment when you choose principle over power. There's no action like courage to show complete vulnerability in the face of opposition. Now, you may be saying that most people don't get the freedom to choose. And I hear you. Somewhere we confuse winning with worth. And even in history where systems open access, opportunity grows. We've seen that time and time again. I guess my message again is redesign success. From one person winning at the top to everybody having a real voice at the table. Not performative, but real. And maybe the next evolution of courage isn't about who you stand beside, but about the system you help build when you do. That's inclusive leadership, making winning less about power and more about shared progress. Sheesh, that was a long one. I'm Janita from Expand Coaching and Consulting, and we help businesses design inclusive workplaces that flourish because of clear roles, fair systems, and acceptable leadership. If this resonates with you, please follow me or get in touch. It is a moment to change. It's a moment to look at our systems and say for our next generation, let's not keep reincarnating this privilege of the past and make access available to all so we can have a way more productive, prosperous economy, social life, and workplace.